Here now to talk about the latest developments from today's public hearings is Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. Congressman Gaetz is a member of the House Judiciary Committee, and he's been one of the most vocal opponents of this whole impeachment process so far. Congressman, great to see you. Today, we actually had a chance to hear from a witness who was on that phone call, that being Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman. Democrats say this undercuts Republicans' arguments about hearsay. Do you think Vindman's testimony today, though, is going to change anyone's mind? Because it seems like the American public isn't really swayed about the Democrats' efforts to impeach the president so far.
Well, I trust the American people, and I don't think that they need to view the transcript that they can plainly read through the lens of Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. Lieutenant Colonel Vindman clearly has strong views on the Ukraine. Those views on a policy substantive level, to some extent seem to rub up against the views that others may have had about the legitimacy of withholding aid for the need to ensure that corruption would not negatively impact the U.S.-Ukraine relationship. But when we look at the transcript ourselves, we see no conditionality. And I think what's also important is that as Vindman was coordinating U.S. policy in the region, as there were meetings with the vice president, with senators, with other top-level diplomats in the Ukraine, there was not a conditionality with this aid that he was able to speak to. He simply heard the call. He heard it through a lens that was concerning to him. He reported it, but you have Mr. Morrison and you have many others who heard the call who did not have the same opinion given the same context. And again, when we look at the words ourselves, it's pretty clear there's no conditioning of aid on any investigations.
Right. A lot of this comes down to interpretation, I guess. But Congressman, Chairman Schiff also stopped Ranking Member Nunes from asking Lieutenant Colonel Vindman about the whistleblower. I wanted to ask you, how certain are you that Schiff or his staff are coordinating directly with the whistleblower and Vindman perhaps as well to leak information to the media and portray this narrative that they are pushing?
I am very concerned about Adam Schiff's contact and coordination with the whistleblower. Adam Schiff has been all over the map when it comes to the whistleblower. I remember early in this process, it was Schiff himself who said we need to hear from the whistleblower. Now that there has been some very troubling reporting about the potential conflicts that the whistleblower may have, the potential political involvement that the whistleblower was engaged in, the friendships that the whistleblower has that are very close on Adam Schiff's own staff. These things, I think, flavor the way that we come to this Ukraine saga. And the more we know, I think the more context we'll have to look at why we're even here in the first place.
And the flip side of this argument, the devil's advocate here, says, look, what the whistleblower has come forward and said, a lot of that has been confirmed or corroborated by some of these witnesses. What do you say to those folks?
Well, not everything that is in the whistleblower's complaint has been confirmed. In fact, there are a number of characterizations that are directly rejected by Ambassador Volker and Mr. Morrison and others. And so I think that where you have factual dispute, credibility, motive, and bias are all reasonable areas for review. And if we're unable to review the bias of the people making the allegations against the president, then I don't think we're given the fair opportunity to present his defense. And so I'm hopeful that we will hear from the whistleblower and that we'll be able to develop evidence around kind of the circus environment with Schiff coordinating with the whistleblower, then lying about that coordination to the American people, and then having views both for and against a public interview of the whistleblower.
There's a picture that's been recirculating. It's resurfaced on the internet. It comes from Rick Perry's Instagram or Twitter feed, I think, and it shows the Ukrainian president with Sondland and Volker and Rick Perry and Colonel Vindman, perhaps at happier times in Kiev. This was during the inauguration of Ukrainian President Zelensky. So we're going to hear from Sondland also this week. What do you expect to hear from Gordon Sondland?
I have never heard a word come out of Gordon Sondland's mouth. I've only read his version of events, and so I want to reserve judgment so that I can see how he presents his version of the facts. But it is disconcerting to me that Ambassador Sondland has also been all over the map. You have his contemporaneous accounts where he's texting that there is no quid pro quo. Then you have his live testimony. Then you have the changes he's made to his live testimony. And then you also have Mr. Holmes' testimony about Mr. Sondland that seems to contradict with the testimony of Bill Taylor. So we'll have to unwind this, but I don't quite know what to make of Ambassador Gordon Sondland yet because he seems to have recounted different conflicting versions of events.
And what Lindsey Graham said about the Trump administration's policy on Ukraine being incoherent, Gordon Sondland is the guy that comes to mind based on what you said there. Let's change gears a little bit, Congressman. The new report out today, a Florida woman who threw a slushie on you at a campaign event back in June was sentenced this week to 15 days in prison. Now, this woman briefly ran against you as a Democrat in 2016, but what do you think about the state of political discourse in this country? I mean, Rand Paul gets tackled by his neighbor. You get a slushie thrown on you. We've seen violence all over the place. Do you think 15 days in prison was appropriate enough sentence for this woman?
I do. I'm grateful to the judge in that case for having some term of incarceration and not just giving this member of Antifa, this person who posted their association with Antifa online, just a free pass. I think it's a healthy sign for our democracy when people show up to congressional town halls and present different views. I want to make people welcome at our events who agree with me, disagree with me, who want to offer praise or criticism, but you have to be able to draw a bright line when somebody wants to throw something or engage in an assault against anyone, because we don't want to animate my supporters or my opponents to any violence. We want people to engage in the marketplace of ideas with their words, with their vote, and that is the sign of a healthy democracy. And in a way, President Trump, he sure has juiced everyone's interest in elections and in the political process, and I think that's actually a great example to the world that we've got active participation and we don't have to come to blows to resolve our differences.
Yeah, no need to throw anything on anyone, whether it's an egg or a slushie. All right, last question for you, Congressman. The Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz is set to testify in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee next month about this investigation into the origins of the Russia probe. It looks at the FISA abuses we've heard so much about. Wanted to get your thoughts on that. Do you expect anyone is actually going to be put in handcuffs as a result of Durham's investigation, or what we're going to learn from the Inspector General?
The best evidence we have that there will be criminal process is that the Durham probe transitioned from an administrative review into a criminal investigation. That didn't just happen by accident. There was some catalyst, some accelerating event that clearly showed that there was criminal intent in play in the origins of the Russia probe. This is precisely what Jim Jordan and I have been saying for years now, and it's about time that the people in the Obama White House who leveraged our allies to do things that would have been unlawful for our own government to do face the consequences that they so richly deserve.
All right, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, great to hear from you. Great to see you as well, and look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Thanks for having me.